Alright, this is Tiny Titans. I am finally doing some of them new comics I did get. I thought I would start with these 3 other issues that come before that story that I have already reviewed. The big Donatello one by Jason Fabergé and Paulie Pelletgun. This is Tiny Titans, Secret Files and Origines. These are a weird line of books that DC did that are like a hodgepodge of different types of supplementary material. You have short stories teasing upcoming stuff or setting up characters. And then you have these Andy Book style profiles in between them. Also, this cover art, which doesn't even feature the whole team, it is by a convicted sex offender, or as they are more traditionally known, a paedophile. Here we have Nightbird, Dick Grayskull, Shrek Boy, Shang-Chi, Flame Wing, Geodudette, and then Donatello. Considering that only Nightbird and Donatello are on the team in that story I have already read, I think this might be setting up characters who show up later in the run. Our first story is a cute little downtime thing with some of the Tiny Titans hanging out. The art is by Paulie Pelletgun for this one. A bunch of the team show up unannounced at Nightbird's apartment and they kind of ruin Nightbird's attempts to shag his landlady. We have some cute character interactions. And maybe it's just me, but I got a real kick out of how dopey Acroman Jr. is drawn to look. He looks like a dumb taxi driver from Brooklyn or something. And in this first story, we do have some setup for plot lines in the main book. We have this stuff here with the babysitter who betrays the team. We saw the fallout of this, or some of the characters talking about this at least, in Tiny Titans 23. The babysitter who looks after Red Arrow's daughter, she is involved with some terrorist cell who want justice for an attack on their fictional country that is clearly a stand-in for Iraq. Then we have Donatello here and some stuff about Dark Angle and her history that I didn't know. And this actually explains one of the things that I said was a plot hole. In that review, I said that it is never explained how the Flask, the Willie West version, it is never explained why he remembers Donatello when nobody else does. But apparently there is this whole other story before that with Dark Angle where she tried to erase Donatello from existence again, and it was only the Flask's memories of her that kept her alive or something like that. It still doesn't explain why Phantasm remembered her though. And speaking of, here we have 2 pages full on teasing that Donatello story. In another reality, we have a version of Donatello who Dark Angle has removed everyone's memories of. So this is this world's Tiny Titans, and they don't know who Donatello is anymore, and she leaves in distress, and then Dark Angle is laughing. It's nice that I actually got this extra context and what feels like bonus content relating to that one Tiny Titans story I have had for years and years. And here is a nice shot of some of the characters, notably not all of them. That is why I didn't call it a team shot. Argos isn't there, but it is a nice splash page by Pelletier. And then on the next one, we have a profile for the Tiny Titans, showing the current roster. Pelletier again, and this time Argos is there. She is up the top. And then we have a story with sideburns, and I am quickly gonna get through it because it is the least interesting story in here. He also has a profile, sideburns. He had his status quo changed, and he had kind of gotten a happy ending. He was able to switch back and forth between his robot version and a human body. Didn't last long, did it? And here is Red Arrow's precocious little daughter. Isn't she cute? Not in the way that the cover artist thinks, though. We have this 2-page feature, and I quite like this. It's just keeping us up to date and letting us know where a bunch of odd members of the Tiny Titans are now. The ones who are, like, not in any book. Like, Joker's daughter, she is in the loony bin. I like this effort and commitment to these characters, and that a writer would want to keep track of them all and acknowledge stuff like Magneta. She was recently in the Stars Girl series. I like this. If I was doing a team book, I would probably keep a personal list on what all the other members are off doing in any other books, or what they are meant to be doing off panel. I like this. Here is a profile for the character Phantasm, Pelletier art. Phantasm, it is a cool looking design. He was a new character that Jason Fabergé introduced, and Phantasm, he goes nowhere because the editor of the book, it changed after issue 25, and the new editor, he despised the Tiny Titans, and he seemed to work towards ruining the book. And Jason Fabergé, he didn't really get to do much of any of his actual ideas. It was like he was just writing scripts for this terrible editor's idea of magic alien children who steal the show from the characters people like, but that editor hated. Phantasm, no real answer to him. He was meant to be an odd character, Danny Phantom, brought back to life, but that was building on continuity, so the editor shot down that idea. Phantasm, he turns out to be a creepy child's mind in an adult's body, which makes his relationship with Argos dodgy and probably appealing to only the cover artist who was in prison for fancying babies. Following that, Deadstroke, and this here is the story I liked the most because it did something I basically needed doing. This is a crash course in geodudet. We get her history and why her history is so confusing, and this actually resolves it. Geodudet, she was an hard member of the Tiny Titans, but then one day she betrayed the team to Deadstroke, and then she died, but then she came back from being died, and there was this whole mystery, like, oh, is this the real Geodudet? Has she come back from beyond the grave? Or is it someone else entirely? Or is it a clone? Or whatever? And this is a short story, but it is both a helpful exercise, and there is a sweet character twist to it as well. She has gone to her brother, Geodude, and they are having some tests done to try to determine whether she is really Geodudet, the original Geodude's sister, if it is her brought back to life, or if she is a clone or somebody else or whatever. And she gans, I know you want to believe your sister is back from the dead. You want me to believe it too, but I do not want to be told who I should be anymore. So then, Geodude, he gets the results, and he says that she is not his sister. But then, the reveal is he was lying to her so that she would be free to be whoever she wants to be. Because, look, the tests say that she was his real sister back from the dead. So I like this story. It fills us in on a character I knew now about, and it seems to resolve the aspect that made her so confusing or complicated. We have a nice bit of heart to the ending here. I reckon this is the best story in this comic. Weirdly though, we didn't get a profile for Geodudet. We get Flame Wing, and our ear is Shrek Boy. We get profiles for them because they are the stars of this next story, which is also the longest one. Shrek Boy and Flame Wing, they stopped some robbers on a subway train, and you think, oh, it's just gonna be a quick disposable story with them stopping some generic criminals. But it turns out to be quite long and feature a lot of characters. Here is a picture of all the side members of the original Tiny Titans. Look, there is Joker's daughter again. And what happens in this one is Shrek Boy, he has a big party and loads of heroes show up. Loads of members of the Tiny Titans. None of the main ones though. Well, actually, depending how you cut it, Geodudet, she is there, and you find something else about her in this story. They didn't actually mention it in the other one, but she supposedly has a history with, she used to date Shrek Boy, and in this she ends up being like the third most important character in this story. So to me, she's like the breakout star of this book. And then Joker's daughter shows up again. This is getting ridiculous. Joker's daughter, She is a dead minor character, but she keeps showing up in all the Tiny Titans stories I read. She crashes the party and she attacks with a bunch of gang members. She is bitter that she wasn't invited to this shindig. And after some fighting, we get a good showing for Flamewing and Geodudet. After some fighting, we get to the end with Shang-Chi. He shows up to the big get-together, announcing his intention that he wants to join the Tiny Titans. Profile here for Shrek Boy's cousin, who I hadn't even mentioned in that story. Then we have one for Shang-Chi. And finally, Paulie Pellet Gun art again for a profile for some baddies I have never heard of before, who might never even appear. I was told to not bother with any more of this run, but I did want to get the issues that come before the ones that I had, and I am glad that I did. This has served a great purpose for us. It has set Geodude up, and she is in that other run that I have. I wouldn't rush out to buy it unless you were in my exact position. I also had already read that Donatello story, so getting the extra serving of scenes related to that was welcome. We get Andy Book style profile entries for a bunch of things, so I'm giving this 7 thumbs up.